Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cutting through some of the noise around study habits. We want to give you the playbook for, well, succeeding at learning itself.
That's right. Our mission today is a deep dive into the actual science, the research behind how we learn things, how we acquire knowledge and skills. And we're really targeting those common study methods, the ones most of us used in school, the stuff we just assumed worked but maybe didn't.
Okay, yeah, let's jump right in because a core finding looking through these sources is that learning isn't just something that happens to you. It's methodical, it's active, a systematic process.
Exactly. And the surprising thing is how often we pick the least efficient ways to do it.
Right, like highlighting
Yeah.
or just reading the same chapter 4 times.
Yeah, huh. The evidence is overwhelming that things like passive rereading or, covering a textbook page in yellow highlighter, they're weak strategies. They might feel productive, but they don't build lasting memory.
That sounds like what the research calls team conventional wisdom, just doing what feels right or what we've always done.
It is. But the power of using the right method is so clear in that story about the all-girls dart experiment.
Oh, yeah, tell us about that. It's a great example.
It really is. So these young women, they had to learn to throw darts, but they were split into groups, learning different ways. One group was, team conventional wisdom, just try harder, focus on the score,
Just keep throwing.
pretty much. But the other group, team learning method, they were taught the actual process, the cognitive stuff, how to approach it, how to correct errors, deliberate practice, thinking about what they were doing.
And the results.
Not even close. By the end, the group that focused on the method scored almost twice as high as the conventional groups.
Wow, twice as high.
Yeah, they weren't just practicing darts, they were practicing how to learn darts.
And that's really the big takeaway for you listening today, isn't it? Mastery isn't just about raw talent, it's about understanding the learning process itself. So if we're building that system, where's step one? The sources seem pretty clear. It starts before you even crack open a book.
It does. The foundation, really, is finding the value, motivation. If the material doesn't mean anything to you personally, your brain just isn't going to prioritize storing it. It's like, think about Jason Wolfson, the Lego builder.
The master builder guy.
Yeah. His amazing work wasn't just about clicking bricks together. It came from connecting those bricks to something deeply meaningful to him, like building things related to his wife's favorite Muppet or sets from Doctor Who because he was a huge fan. It was personal.
Okay, so it has to be personal relevance. And the sources warn that just being told something is important, like by your boss or professor, that doesn't usually work.
Right. Often it can even backfire. It feels like an order, not something you actually care about. The learner, you have to find that connection yourself. There's this really telling study with statistics students.
Stats, okay, a classic required, not loved course for many.
Exactly. So in this study, some students had to write these short essays, just reflecting on how stats concepts, probability, correlation, whatever, might connect to their own lives. Future jobs, hobbies, personal finances.
They had to make it relevant themselves. And what happened?
The impact was huge. Their average grades went way up. Students who were looking at a C average often ended up with a B.
Just from that one exercise.
Yeah, they didn't suddenly get smarter overnight. They just gave their brains a reason to engage, a reason to store the info. It mattered to them.
So they shifted from just sitting there to actually engaging with it.
Which brings us to the next point. Learning requires mental doing. It has to be active.
Not just passive consumption, like sitting in a lecture hall.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
We have this idea that knowledge will just somehow soak into our brains if we listen long enough or skim enough pages. But learning needs mental production.
And we know passive learning often fails, right? There are stats on that.
There are. Students in those traditional lecture courses, they're about 50% more likely to fail compared to students in active learning settings. 50%.
That's massive. So how should we think about knowledge then, if not just facts to absorb?
Think of it like a road network in your brain. Expertise isn't just knowing one address. It's having this huge interconnected system of roads, highways, side streets. The goal isn't just facts. It's learning a whole system of thinking, like thinking like a scientist or reasoning like an economist or how a chef thinks about flavor combinations.
Okay, a system. But that system, or at least our ability to build it quickly, has limits, right? Especially now with so much information thrown at us.
Absolutely. We need to talk about short-term memory. Researchers sometimes call it the brain's sketch pad.
The sketch pad, okay.
Yeah.
And it's small.
Extremely limited. It can probably only handle maybe 3 or 4 new pieces of information at once before things start falling off. That's the reason why true multitasking while learning is basically a myth. You might think you're learning from an online class while checking email.
But you're really just switching back and forth, and probably failing at both.
Pretty much. You're overloading that tiny sketchpad. It just can't keep up.
And this isn't just theoretical. Background noise, distractions, they actually hurt learning.
Significantly. There was research showing students trying to learn new stuff online with background music. They learned as much as 150% less. 150%.
Wow. So if you feel overwhelmed by new material, it might not be you, it might be how it's being presented. Too much at once.
Often, yes. The instruction is just flooding the sketchpad.
So the takeaway for teaching yourself, or for educators, is break it down. Present knowledge in manageable chunks. Respect that 3 or 4 item limit.
Exactly. Build that road network piece by manageable piece.
Okay, so we've got value, active engagement, managing cognitive load. Now let's get into the really powerful techniques. Developing mastery, making knowledge stick.
Right. And the consensus here across all the research is really strong. The single best approach, it's retrieval practice.
Retrieval practice like
Self-quizzing.
Yeah.
Summarizing things from memory without looking, explaining concepts out loud to yourself or even to an imaginary person. It forces that active mental doing we talked about.
And this is where the whole rereading thing really falls apart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us about that study comparing them.
Yeah, it's a classic. So they had 2 groups learning the same text. Group A did the typical thing, read it 4 times in a row.
Okay, the rereaders.
Right. Group B read it only once, but then they spent the rest of the time practicing recalling it, trying to pull the information out of their own memory 3 times.
So read once, recall 3 times versus read 4 times. And the recall group.
Learned significantly more. It wasn't even close.
Why? Why is pulling it out better than putting it in multiple times?
Well, when you reread, you get this feeling of familiarity. Oh yeah, I know this. But that's often an illusion. When you force yourself to retrieve it, like answering a question or summarizing, you are actively strengthening the neural pathway. You're practicing using the knowledge.
You're making the road stronger, not just driving past the sign again.
That's a great analogy.
Yes.
You're learning to produce it, not just recognize it.
Okay, but retrieval practice, testing yourself.
Yeah.
That means you're going to get things wrong sometimes. You're going to struggle.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a really crucial point. Embracing that struggle. Experts call it desirable difficulties.
Desirable difficulties. Sounds a bit counterintuitive. We usually think learning should be easy.
We do, but that's a misconception. Frictionless learning is often forgotten learning. Difficulty, struggle, making errors. That's what actually strengthens the system. Errors are essential. They create meaning.
How does an error create meaning?
Okay, think about a simple trivia question like, what's the capital of Australia?
Right. Most people guess Sydney or Melbourne.
Exactly. And when you hear the correct answer is Canberra, there's that little jolt, right? That buzzing shock of surprise, as one researcher put it.
Yeah, like, oh, really?
That jolt signals to your brain, pay attention, something important just happened. You flag that pathway as wrong, and now you need to fix it. That struggle, that surprise, that's a sign of real learning happening.
And it's important to note this isn't about being smart or not, right? Even really high aptitude people struggle.
Oh, definitely. Look at someone like Jordan Ellenberg, the mathematician. Brilliant guy, child prodigy stuff. He admits that when he's working on really hard, cutting-edge problems, he spends maybe 95% of his time just completely confused, stuck.
95%.
Yeah. So if a certified genius needs that much struggle, it tells you difficulty isn't failure. It's just part of the process of mastery.
Okay, so struggle is good, retrieval is key, but we also forget things incredibly fast. What was the stat? Like half of what we learn is gone in an hour.
Something like that, yeah. The forgetting curve is steep. So retrieval practice helps, but you also need another weapon against forgetting. Spacing. Or distributed learning. You have to space out your learning sessions over time.
Right, no cramming allowed. Or at least not for long-term learning.
Exactly. Cramming might get you through an exam tomorrow, but the information decays rapidly. Your brain needs time between exposures to consolidate the memories.
And there was a neat tip about using flashcards to enforce spacing.
Yes. A study looked at how students used flashcards. Group A made small piles, maybe 10 cards, and once they got a card right, they took it out. Mastered it quickly.
Okay, feels efficient.
Feels efficient. Group B used one single large pile. So even if they got a card right, it stayed in the pile. They were forced to see it again later, and they inevitably forgot some and had to retrieve them again over longer intervals.
So more struggle, more spacing built in. And Group B did better.
Significantly better. About 30% better outcomes on the final test. That forced spacing and repeated retrieval, even though it felt harder, made the learning much more durable.
So the practical tip is, keep your flashcards in one big pile. Don't retire them too quickly.
Pretty much. Space out your practice over days, weeks, whatever the time scale is. Don't try to do it all in one marathon session.
All right, this brings us towards the end stage. We've acquired knowledge, practiced retrieving it, spaced it out. Now we need to rethink it, extend it.
Yes, exactly. And the first hurdle here is something called the illusion of explanatory depth.
Fancy term for
thinking we understand something much better than we actually do. Basic overconfidence, it happens to everyone.
like Art Markman's toilet example.
Yes, the toilet example.
Ah,
He's a cognitive psychologist, right? Knows a lot about how thinking works. But he admitted that even though he uses a toilet every single day, when he actually tried to sit down and explain the mechanism, how the tank fills, how the valve works, he realized his understanding was incredibly shallow.
he couldn't actually explain it.
Nope. He'd massively overestimated his knowledge of the system.
I think we can all relate to that. And the sources say this illusion gets worse when things are presented really smoothly.
It does. Think about a really polished lecture or a super slick TED Talk. It flows so well, it's so clear.
But you feel like you've mastered it just by watching.
Exactly. That fluency is deceptive. It confuses us into thinking we understand deeply, but often if it's learned too easily, it's forgotten just as easily.
Okay, so how do we fight that illusion and build real deep understanding, move beyond just facts?
We need to build systems thinking, focus on the relationships between the facts. Like we said earlier, expertise isn't just knowing addresses, it's knowing the whole roadmap.
The connections, like in that other dart experiment, the underwater one.
Oh yeah, that's another great one. People throwing darts at a target underwater. They could learn the procedure to hit it at one depth, but the only way they could adapt when the target was moved to a different depth was if they understood the underlying principle, the system.
Which was?
Light refraction, how water bends light. If they only knew the procedure, they were lost when things changed. If they understood the system, they could adapt. Knowledge has to be flexible.
So we need tools to help us build those connections, see the system, what works.
Analogies are fantastic. They bridge the gap between something new and complex and something you already understand, like the wine expert example, comparing light-bodied wine to skim milk and full-bodied wine to whole milk. Suddenly, mouthfeel makes sense. It's relatable.
You connect the abstract to the concrete.
Yeah.
Good. What else? Any visual tools?
Concept maps are really powerful. They're kind of like Venn diagrams, but more flexible. You draw out concepts and literally draw lines between them, labeling the relationships. It forces you to actively wrestle with how ideas connect. Great for sorting through lots of information.
Forces that metacognition,
Yeah.
thinking about your own thinking.
Exactly. And speaking of forcing deeper processing, there's one more technique that's incredibly effective. The protege effect.
Which is?
Teaching someone else, or even just preparing to teach someone else.
Ah, right, because you have to organize it in your head first.
You do. You have to figure out what's most important, structure it logically, find ways to explain it clearly, put it in your own words. It forces you to process the information at a much deeper level than just reading or listening. You work harder if you expect to teach it.
It circles back to that active retrieval and explanation we talked about earlier. Makes sense. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. We've gone through value, targeting the learning, developing skills through retrieval and struggle, spacing it out, extending and relating. What's the big payoff for you, the listener, if you adopt these kinds of deliberate, active methods?
The payoff is realizing that learning is a skill you can actively develop. It's not fixed. By focusing on value, target, develop, extend, relate, and rethink, you can get dramatically better.
And not just a little better, right? The improvement can be substantial.
Oh, absolutely. There was one study where college students got just 20 minutes of advice on these research-backed methods, no extra study time needed. Their test scores jumped by over 20 percentage points. That's like going up 2 whole grade levels.
Just by changing how they learned, not how long they learned.
Exactly. The effort you put into optimizing your learning process pays off massively.
That really is a staggering return on investment.
Okay. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something that came up in the research but steps outside the individual learner a bit.
Okay.
It's about the social context. The research points out that in really high-achieving environments, selective schools, competitive programs, your peers, can actually explain a huge chunk of your learning outcomes.
As much as two-thirds in some study.
Two-thirds. So the provocative thought is this. Take a hard look at your social network. The people you learn with, the people you discuss ideas with. Are they pushing you towards that desirable difficulty? Towards struggle and deep understanding? Or are they reinforcing easier, less effective habits?
Because that external network, the expectations and habits of those around you, might be shaping your own learning drive and your ultimate success way more than you realize.
Something to think about as you start your next deep dive.